next speaker has an Advanced Communicator Silver and an Advanced Leader Bronze. Today she's doing project number 2, Interpreting Poetry, from the Advanced Manual on Interpretive Reading. The objectives of this 6 to 8 minute project are to understand the differences between poetry and prose, to recognize how poetry uses imagery, rhythm, meter, cadence, and rhyme to convey meanings and emotions in their poetry, to apply vocal techniques that will aid in the effectiveness of the reading. In this project, the speaker's task is to introduce and present a poem using vocal techniques to capture the imagery and rhythm of a poem and to convey its meaning and emotions to the audience. Please note that unlike other speech projects, the interpretive reading projects recommend very limited use of direct eye contact with the audience. Please welcome Susan Stewart in her 6 to 8 minute speech entitled Legacy.
Good evening, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. 5 years ago, my best friend, Barbara Ellingson, was diagnosed with cancer. She was told at that time that she had 1 or 2 years to live if she followed the traditional medical routine of going and having the surgeries and the chemotherapy and the radiation. She chose not to do that. Instead, she followed a regimen of raw diet and alternative medication. I did mention that that was 5 years ago, right, that she was diagnosed. She's sitting with us tonight, here. Now, when Barbara could no longer, her illness had progressed to a point that she could no longer go out to her job, she still remained very productive and creative. In addition to everything else that she was doing, she started writing poetry. She wrote a great number of poems, and a number of them were focused on what she called the creature poems. Small creature poems and large creature poems. And there's a whole compilation of these, which I don't think is the zenith of her career, but it is a culmination in the book that she wrote of these poems. It is entitled Creature Poems for Small and Large Humans, Entertaining Poems with an Educational Guide. Tonight, I'd like to read a selection from this anthology. Small Creatures, number 12. Itty-bitty, leggy biter, darkish brown, though could be lighter. Master hunter, master spinner, watching, waiting for his dinner. What's the weapon all his victims dread? A slim, a soft, a supple, silky thread, with sticky feel, but strength like steel, designed and woven into yarn in trees, in fields, or in a barn. His crafted webs are spun in various shapes and sizes. However, they are done, they reap their many prizes. He waits, he peers. He looks around with all of his 8 eyes when food arrives. At least for him, it comes as no surprise. But is it only food? Or do we have some deep, mysterious fascination for how he's led us into ways of crafting food for our imagination? With sleight of hand and soaring flights of fantasy, or magic spells, or even necromancy, we wonder, does the leggy biter care, and is his dangling hopes of all that's good, or will he tangle and ensnare us in his strangling ropes as any devil would. As our inventive notions intertwine, we find we spin a yarn that's just as fine, and we put him up as monster or hero on the silver screen. And there he is, a creature so far-fetched, the likes of which was never seen. Before you know it, measurements and scope and size get magnified, and images are glorified. Or else we're simply horrified. So we project romantic, shocked, and frantic fainting, dainty damsels in distress that only he, a hero as we concocted, rescues with as much success. We see him clinging, climbing, swinging all around and in between the tall skyscrapers, performing acrobatic feats all up and down with his fantastic daring capers. We see the damsel shrink and cower behind him in some nearby tower, as if the fate of all the world lay dangling from a single claw below his leg, her fluttering heart, her flitting lashes, showing us how ably she can plead and beg. Or else, amid the scenes of body parts available to slurp and suck, he stands alone, horrific symbol of a monster who has gone amok among the hapless bodies, being chewed and tattered, who scream and groan as they're being spewed and splattered. Is he a demigod, or does he generate the huge upheaval of that primeval force that we experience and know as evil? And as the curdling blood in all our veins begins to freeze, the kid beside us says, "Just pass the popcorn, if you please." So let's remove the props and such that we would rather shun until we see that getting scared is sometimes all in fun. Take down the silver screen, untell the tale, unspin the yarn, and minimize the scale of such humongous, monstrous shapes and sizes, reminding us all those grim demises. And then we see that this is surely no beginner. And that's what makes him such a splendid, long-term winner. Itty-bitty Mr. Spider, just an inch, though could be wider. Master hunter, master spinner, watching, waiting for his dinner. Now, in this book, Barbara went on to not only give us the magic of her poetry, but also the magic of how she created the poetry. And I want to read a little excerpt of her poetic notes, which go throughout the book and accumulate. Poetry, like any other literature, can be used to convey concepts like good and evil or fantasy versus reality. We can make up things in our minds that are either scary or heroic, but we can also undo these and end up with an interest in this creature himself, who really has within him so many possibilities besides the ones we assign to him, and even more than we could think of. The differences in the lengths of these lines between one stanza and the next almost mirrors the stretchy quality of the spider's incredibly silky threads. That's another example of how a poem's structure alone can help to transmit feelings about things, whether we decide to be consciously aware of this or not. Some words can have double meanings, like yarn. This device can be used intentionally as a play on words. Another example in this poem is food, you eat, versus food for thought. There are some more uses of alliteration in this poem, or the repetition of certain sounds that appear within one line and also go across both lines into a stanza. For example, dangling hopes, then strangling ropes. Another is chewed and tattered, then spewed and splattered. This alliteration actually constitutes or forms a type of rhyming. When it isn't used at the ends of lines, like chewed, spewed, or dangling, strangling, it's called internal rhyming. And she does go on. I don't have time to continue with her notes here, but they are in this book, and it's a wonderful tool for teachers, for homeschoolers, for anyone who wants to learn how to write poetry or just enjoy some good poems. And I think we can safely say that Barbara has given us her legacy.